Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our information session on personal branding using LinkedIn. This event will be approximately an hour long. A couple housekeeping rules just before we get started. If everyone could keep their camera and microphone off during the event, that would be great. If you have any questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat box and Lindsay will try to answer them as she goes. If not, we'll try to get to them at the end. So with that, let's get started. My name is Keisha Lockyer, and I work for Skills Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador. And here with me today is special guest Lindsay Newman. So for those of you who don't know, Skills Canada is a not-for-profit organization that helps educate youth and other demographics on the various careers and skill trades and technologies. So I will let Lindsay take over and introduce herself and start the session.
Thank you, Keisha. So as Keisha mentioned, my name is Lindsay Newman, pronouns she, her. I actually also work for Skills Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador as an entrepreneur project coordinator. Today, my presentation doesn't have anything to do with my work necessarily. It more so comes from my education background. So I'm a fourth year business student at Memorial University with a concentration in marketing. And while I do really love marketing and social media marketing and those kinds of things, my particular interest area is personal branding and how folks can kind of communicate their brand and figure out what it is that they want to do when they hit the job search. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen and get into the presentation. Once I do share my screen, I won't be able to see anyone. So if anyone does have any questions or anything like that, feel free to unmute yourself and ask or just pop it in the chat. And I'll be happy to answer your question. And Keisha, if I do miss any, if you wouldn't mind just kind of popping in and letting me know there's a question, that would be awesome. All right, so welcome to identifying your personal brand as well as LinkedIn optimization. So one second, I have to move everybody over to the left side. All right, so the first, I guess, activity that folks can't really do right now, and this is more so when it comes to a one-on-one session about a LinkedIn profile optimization, as well as kind of your personal brand and where you currently stand, is to Google or Bing yourself. So when you Google yourself, you want to take note of what page you find yourself on first and what kind of content is it that you're finding. So you can try just searching your name. So for example, just searching Lindsay Newman. However, Lindsay Newman is a very, a name that's used worldwide. Chances are I am not the only Lindsay Newman in this whole world. So you can also try searching things that other employers might search. So for example, Lindsay Newman, Newfoundland, or Lindsay Newman, Skills Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador, Lindsay Newman, Memorial University. Those key things about you that employers might be able to find you on Google. So when you try searching those your name with those keywords, where do you find yourself and what kind of content are you seeing? Is it good content? Is it content that you want employers seeing? Is it not? If not, then how do we kind of make sure that those are kind of pushed to the bottom as much as possible and that the good content is towards the top? So the key questions you want to be asking yourself is, where do you want to be? Do you want to be on the first page of Google, or do you kind of want to be kind of behind the background? What kind of content do you want on Google, and how do you get there? So those are going to kind of be the key questions that are going to kind of formulate what we're doing today. So in order to identify your brand, there's kind of 5 steps that I like to go through. So the first stage is reflection. So in order to have somewhere to go, you need a destination. So it's the same thing with identifying your brand. So, for example, if you're going on a road trip, you're not just going to hop in the car and just drive wherever. You're going to have a destination. Like, for example, I'm going to Corner Brook and I'm going to put that in my GPS and that's where I'm going to go. It's the same thing with your personal brand. You don't just, start creating a brand for yourself for graphic design when you actually want to be a plumber, because that wouldn't add up. It wouldn't make sense. So you have to have a destination. So the 5 steps are, we're going to start with reflection. So what industry, country, or company is it that you're targeting? Next, you're going to do your research. So let's say, for example, I'm going to use Skills Canada just because it's pretty relevant right now. So let's say we want to get hired by Skills Canada. So we're going to do a little bit of research about the company. We know that Skills Canada promotes education in skilled trade and technologies, and also through an immersive approach to learning, so hands-on experience. So what we're going to do is we're going to align our values with Skills Canada. So when we think about Skills Canada, we think skilled trade jobs, technology jobs. We think about youth. We think about hands-on experience. So we want to make sure that we're aligning our values with that. So empowering youth to try out new things, to learn where their skill sets are. Maybe encouraging folks to try out a skilled trade or technology job. So again, just kind of aligning your values with the company to make sure that you're matching up with what it is that they're looking for, so that if, let's say, the executive director of Skills Canada is on LinkedIn one day and comes across your profile and sees how similar you are to Skills Canada, maybe she'll be inclined to reach out. So next we have our personal mission statement. So this is an online activity, and if Keisha, you wouldn't mind sharing the link in the chat, I'll go over a little bit about the personal mission statement in a little bit, but essentially the personal mission statement just kind of helps you to identify what your mission statement is. So what is it that you want to do, and how are you going to align your values with your future employer? So again, we'll kind of go through this one in a little bit, but I did just want to include it here. And then once you get all that done, it's time to get to work. So you've got your brand figured out, and now it's time to communicate it and get up on LinkedIn. So speaking of LinkedIn, we're going to go through some settings through LinkedIn that are really important to kind of take note of as you're optimizing your profile. So of course, with any profile, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, you're going to have your account access. So your email addresses, your phone numbers, your passwords, where you're signed in, your verification status, those kinds of things. I'm not really going to get too in depth on that. You folks can kind of have a look through those yourself and figure out those for your profile. But I do want to touch on some really important ones. So when you go under settings and privacy and you're in profile information, you'll see here the arrows pointing to people also viewed. So you definitely want to make sure that this is turned to no. And the reason you want to do this is because if someone comes to your profile and they're liking what they see, and you're a great candidate for a job that they might have open, when they scroll to the bottom of your profile, they're actually going to come across about 10 other profiles that are super similar to yours that other employers have also viewed. So you want to make sure this is turned off, because you don't want to send an employer who you want to hire you to another candidate because they're similar to you. So make sure that this is turned off so that that doesn't happen. Next, under account management. So I had a question a couple days ago about what you could do with old accounts. So this is just answering that question. So if you have a LinkedIn account, but maybe you don't know the password for it, or maybe you just don't use it anymore, you can merge it with your current account if you want to. You can hibernate an account, so you can deactivate your account, or you can totally close an account, so then it's just gone forever. So these are your options if you're looking to create a new profile. Again, you can merge two, or you can choose what you want to do with that old profile. Next, your visibility on LinkedIn. This is another really important one. So share profile updates with your network. That's the next important one we're going to look at. So for the sake of updating your profile, you want to make sure this is turned off. Because if you're going back and you're adding all of your work experience over the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years, you're adding all of your volunteer experience, you're adding in all of those things, all of those are going to come up on the feed of the people that you're connected with. And we don't want that to happen, because the last thing we want to do is flood people's feeds with previous work experience and maybe annoy them to the point that they unconnect with us. So for the sake of updating your account, turn this off. But once you're done making those changes and you're just ready to work with your LinkedIn account as usual, then turn it back on, because it actually does act as a good connection method. So for example, if you do get a new job, LinkedIn will post, Lindsay Newman started a new job at Skills Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador, and that will come up on your connections feed. And this is great because then it offers the opportunity for connections to comment on it. And when they comment on it, it gives you the opportunity to begin to network with them or communicate with them. So it's just kind of an open door. So let's say, for example, someone that you really want to work with, or someone who works at a company that you're really interested in working for, and they comment on your status and they say, congratulations on your new job. You can comment back and you can say something like, thank you so much, greatly appreciated. I'd love to grab coffee and catch up sometime soon. You're opening the door then for a future connection. So make sure that you're keeping this on once you've got your profile updated, but until you have it updated, please turn it off just so you don't drive anyone to unconnect with you. So next, this one isn't necessarily in your settings. It's can be accessed on your profile. So you can let folks know if you're open to work or not. And this is a really important setting for two reasons. So one, if you are open to work, then you want employers to know that. You want them to know that you're open, and you want them to know that they can reach out to you if you're looking for work. However, the opposite is also true. If you have a full-time job and your LinkedIn says that you're looking for work, and your manager comes across your profile and sees that you're looking for work, might not be so great. So if you do have a full-time job that you are not looking for another job, make sure that this is turned off. Just again, because we don't want those awkward conversations at work. So next, we're going to talk about your public profile and URL. So when you go into your profile, there's a button right on the right-hand side that says Edit Public Profile and URL. So this allows you to update the website link that brings you to your LinkedIn profile. So this is really great for when you're sharing your LinkedIn externally. So for example, if you want to put your LinkedIn profile in your resume, or if you want to send it to someone, then you want to have a LinkedIn profile URL that makes sense, because LinkedIn will automatically give you a URL that's just a string of letters and numbers. So you want to make sure it makes sense to you. So first hyphen last name, for example, is a great opportunity. If that's taken, again, because chances are there's more Lindsay Newmans in the world, but I happen to be lucky that I got this one. Make it something simple like Lindsay-Newman 1, for example. Just something that is memorable and easy for people to get to without having to put in a string of letters and numbers. So another thing that you can actually do with LinkedIn, you access it through your profile and a button called Add Profile in Another Language. So this allows you to actually duplicate your LinkedIn profile, and it creates it in another language. So if you're someone who speaks two languages, for example, you can actually create a LinkedIn profile. You've already done the work in English, and you don't want to have to do all that work all over again. So LinkedIn will actually duplicate your LinkedIn profile and put it into that second language, which is great because then, if you're looking for a job in Germany and you're also looking for a job here in Canada where English is the first language, well, now you've got LinkedIn for both languages. So now that we've kind of looked at the settings for LinkedIn, now what we're going to do is assess our current profile. So we want to, keyword is going to be a really big word throughout this presentation. And a keyword is just basically, a word that you want to be remembered. So when you're looking at job ads for jobs that are within a similar realm of what you're looking to be hired, what kinds of keywords are they using? So what are the words that are really prominent that they're looking for in an ideal candidate? And do you have those keywords in your LinkedIn profile? The next question is, do you have all of your work and volunteer experience listed, or your courses and certificates? A way to figure out what your keywords are on LinkedIn and what words show up the most is by making a word cloud out of your experiences. So you can actually turn your LinkedIn profile into a Word document. You can find that through settings. And if you just copy all of that and you put it into a word cloud, you'll see what words show up the most. And you want to make sure that the words that you want to be identified as towards your future employer are the ones that are showing up the most. So I just have an example here of a sample graphic design job ad. So what we're going to do is we're going to identify the keywords here that we could potentially use within our LinkedIn profile. So you'll see here, communication materials is one of the things listed here for this job ad. So I should preface that this job ad is a graphic design job currently available with the city of St. John's. I just took it right off of Google, copy and pasted it right into here. Of course, the reference is at the bottom there. But it just goes to show that this is a real life job ad, and this is the kinds of things you want to keep an eye out for. So when you see communication materials, you want to try and make sure that they know when you're applying, whether it's through your LinkedIn or your resume, that you're good with communication and that you can verbally speak well, but also write well. And that the materials that you're going to put out on social media or any sort of communication channels are going to make sense and they're going to be fluent. So maybe you're going to use words like good communication skills. Next, we see creative. So that in and of itself is a keyword because you can describe yourself as creative. Professionally, you can describe yourself as professional. Brand standards. So within this, you can talk about how you can meet brand standards and about how you're good at following rules. Because with brand standards, of course, this generally is a list of rules that a company has, whether it's their brand colors, whether it's their brand fonts, sizes, how big the logo is going to be. So making it aware that you are good at following instructions. Next, visually attractive templates. So you might want to talk about maybe any previous graphic design experience that you have. Throw in some examples of some things that you've created to show them that you can make something visually attractive. Next, we see assist staff. So this can be converted into teamwork or team player. So you want to make sure the employer knows that you're a team player and that when staff need help, that you're there to assist. Working with clients, of course, customer service. So we want to make sure that the employer knows that we're good at customer service and maybe any relevant experience that we have. And next we see seeking the best possible price, quality, and efficient delivery, which this takes patience. So if you're going through a bunch of different options and you have to find the best one, you need a lot of patience. So you want to make sure that your employer knows that you have the patience that it takes to go through a task like this. So of course, there are tons of other examples that we could have used as we gone through this, but the whole point of this activity was to identify the key words that we could take out and describe ourselves as in order to make ourselves seem fit for a job ad. So when you are identifying what your keywords are going to be, of course, you can look at job ads that are similar. But another thing that you can do if you've identified the industry or the company that you want to be employed with, check out your future employer or others that work within that company. So what kinds of keywords is it that they are using? And how can you input these keywords into your profile? So again, when you're talking about your previous work experience and you're describing the roles that you did in that job, try and use keywords that your future employer uses or that others in the company use, or again, keywords from those job ads so that you can show that you have the experience. You can also put it in your about section for your biography and make sure that folks know, who you are and what kinds of keywords are in your profile that make you suitable for that job. So next, you can look at what kinds of groups they are a part of and what are their interests. So you can actually see what kinds of influencers, companies, schools, etc. that people are part of on LinkedIn. And the reason you want to do this is because you want to align your content with theirs. So when you join a similar group as someone else on LinkedIn, or you like similar pages, companies, influencers, the content that they're seeing on their LinkedIn profile is going to be the same as what you're seeing in your LinkedIn profile, which means that if you reshare some of that content, the employer is going to see, wow, that person, they stick out to me because they are sharing the kinds of things that I see on my profile and that I have interest in. And therefore, they're automatically probably going to notice you, or at least you have a higher chance of them noticing you. So if you want to find where someone's interests are, if you scroll down to the bottom of their LinkedIn profile, you'll see the influencers, companies, groups, schools, etc. So this is an example from my profile. So if I had a company and someone wanted to get hired by me, of course they could go in and they could see who my influencers are, like their stuff. And if they started sharing things from Adam Grant, again, I would notice them and be like, oh my gosh, I also love Adam Grant. And then they would stick out to me a little bit more than everyone else in my LinkedIn profile. So another tip is that by joining similar groups, it allows you to message others without a connection. So you can't actually direct message someone unless you're connected with them. And sometimes it's a little bit intimidating to send a connection to someone you don't know. So if you join a similar group with them, then at least it allows you to send that message. You can say, like, hey, saw you were in this group along with me. And you can add a little message there, personalize it a little bit. Maybe talk about a post that you saw in the group that you found particularly interesting and ask for their thoughts on it. Again, it just opens up that communication network. So now that we've kind of identified what our keywords are, we can start building our profile. So we're going to look at the About section. We're also going to look at our job and volunteer descriptions and make sure that they are optimized for mobile. And of course, we're going to use our keywords to describe our roles, and we're going to add photos. So again, all of these screenshots are taken from my own personal LinkedIn, just because, of course, I didn't want to go into someone else's profile and take examples from theirs. So I'm just going to kind of walk through a bunch of different examples about do's and don'ts about your profile. So when you go into someone's profile, this is what you'll see automatically. So in the About section, you see Lindsay is passionate about getting involved and empowering youth to optimize their skill sets, ... So what you want to do is make sure that the first 142 characters of your biography is a complete sentence, and that it makes sense, and that it describes who you are. So when you read that sentence, you know that I'm passionate, I like to get involved, and I like to empower youth to optimize their skill sets. So if you're interested in that, and if you're an employer who maybe has a company that does similar things, you're going to click See More. And when you click See More, you're going to see the one that describes it a little more in depth. So in this in-depth description, I talk more about engaging students and accessibility to resources and student engagement and involvement. And it just kind of gives you a little more of a snapshot of who I am. So, I got this through the personal mission statement, that Keisha shared in the chat a few moments ago. So I will go through some examples of some questions in just a few seconds, but essentially what you want to do is after you answer all of these questions, you're going to get almost like a short story about who you are. So when you get that short story, you want to condense it down to about 350 words like I have here. So by condensing it down to those 350 words, you're not boring someone with a huge story about who you are. At 350 words, you have enough information in there that it should describe who you are, what it is that you're passionate about, and maybe what it is that you're looking for. Then you want to condense that 350 words down into 142 characters so that when they first read your profile, they're seeing that full sentence in 142 characters and they know exactly who you are from that one sentence. And I know it's really hard to condense that stuff down. It takes a lot of time and patience. But once you get it done, you never have to do it again. So if you have the time and patience to put into it, I definitely recommend doing so because, again, your biography is going to be the first thing that people are going to see when they come to your profile. So I did add some examples of questions that are in the personal mission statement. So this was question number 2. What do I really love to do at work? And what do I really love to do in my personal life? So these questions get you thinking about what it is that you like to do within your personal life or within work. And what it does is after you answer the series of 10 questions, it gives you a whole, again, what I call short story. So it's a really great method because instead of just sitting down and trying to write out a biography with no prompts and nothing to really, get you thinking, this gets you thinking and it gives you the questions that you need to think about to make that biography. So next we have a question on what do I consider to be important future contribution to the most important people in my life? So another very important question that again gets you thinking about you and what it is that you're going to contribute to others. And this one is my favorite question, influence. So imagine you could invite to dinner 3 people who have influenced you the most, past or present. Write their names in the boxes below, then record the one quality or attribute you admire most in these people. So the reason I love this question is because the leadership can be a really sticky area. It's something that we hesitate to call ourselves. No one calls themselves a leader. No one says, I'm a leader in my community. But if someone comes to you and says, name 3 leaders in your community, you can name them off. And when they say, why are they leaders in your community? You can tell why. Because when you're talking about someone else and their ability to do something, it's a lot easier than talking about yourself. So when you're prompted with this question, you think about the people who you really admire and who have a lot of influence in your life. And then you're able to think about, okay, so what are the kinds of things that they do that I can also do? And it just helps, again, to kind of make that mission statement and to get you thinking about who it is that you want to be. So that's a little bit about the about section and biographies. So next we have job and volunteer descriptions. So again, this is a snapshot from my profile. So I've kind of made it a little bit weird just for the sake of this presentation. So as we go down through my profile, you'll see project coordinator with Skills Canada, Newfoundland, Labrador. You'll see that I worked with Clio for quite a while, but the SVB one, Student Volunteer Bureau, is the really important one here. So it shows that I was a coordinator. It gives you a little snapshot of what it is that I did in my day-to-day life at that job. Under that, you'll see a much more descriptive version of what I did, as well as a photo. So this one is a really well put together job description because, again, it tells you my role. It gives you a brief description of what it is I did in that role. If you want to read more, you've got the bigger summary of that role. And you've also got a photo to kind of see what my life looked like in that role. So when we look at the broader profile, again, the Student Volunteer Bureau, that description is where we want to be. Project Coordinator for Skills Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador is where we don't want to be. And the reason we don't want to be there is because the title. So when you are looking at a LinkedIn profile from a mobile device, I think I might have it on the next page. I do. You can see that the bigger descriptions are gone. You can't see them. You can't see the photos. So when someone is on a mobile device and they're going through your LinkedIn profile, you want to make sure that they can tell what it is that you did in that role through your description. So again, when they see Skills Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador, and they just see project coordinator. Project coordinator is a very ambiguous word. There's many different projects I could have been working on. Whereas when you come down to coordinator for the Student Volunteer Bureau, you see that I was overseeing daily operations. I was hiring and training and supervising student staff and volunteers. So it really gives you a snapshot of what it is that I did in that role. So that's why it's really important to optimize your titles. So you get 100 characters in your titles. So you want to make sure that you're using all of those 100 characters throughout your LinkedIn profile within all of your title descriptions, whether it's your paid work experience or your volunteer experience. So next, the reason that the Student Volunteer Bureau description is good is because, again, it has that thorough role description. So even though when you're looking at it on a mobile device, you can actually click in on the role description and it will then give you the bigger paragraph. But again, if you're not getting someone with your title, they're not going to want to click in and see the more things that you did. Again, if they're just seeing project coordinator, that just sounds boring. No one's going to really read more into that. They're probably just going to go find someone else's profile. So you really want to make sure that you're capturing them with your titles. And lastly, of course, the SVB is optimized for mobile, which is what I just mentioned. So again, when you're scrolling through, you can see what it is I did without even clicking in. It just makes it easier. You've got to remember that, employers, when they're looking for someone to hire, they don't spend a lot of time at it. So if you drop off your resume at a store, they say on average that an employer will look at your resume for up to 11 seconds. 11 seconds is really not a long time. So you really want to make sure that, when you're doing these things, you're really communicating who you are and what you have to offer as quick as you possibly can. And again, no one uses desktop these days. No one's on their laptops. Everyone's on their phones or their iPads. So you want to make sure that, again, this is accessible information to them and that you're making it as easy as possible. Oh, there we go, 100 characters. So next, we're going to build our profile. So two things that are super important are your skills as well as recommendations. So when we look at skills on LinkedIn, this is what it looks like. So you can add, I'm not sure if there's a limit or not, but I usually recommend that you add about 20 skills. So you can add these skills to your profile. And what happens is that other people within your networks can actually come in and endorse those skills. And what that means is that they're saying, yes, Lindsay's really good at this skill. And it's really important that you go in and endorse your friends, because when you endorse your friends, chances are they're going to endorse you back. So you'll see here that my event planning and student engagement have been endorsed 18 times and leadership 20 times. Most of that is because I went in and I started endorsing my friends on LinkedIn. And when I started endorsing their skills, of course, they returned the favor and did the same for me. So that's kind of how you get your skills endorsed. Of course, you can cold ask someone to endorse your skills. No problem with that whatsoever. But this just makes it a little bit easier. And also, you're kind of giving back when you're endorsing someone else's skills as well. So next we have recommendations. So these are kind of like a little mini reference letter, let's say on your LinkedIn profile. So this is really great for employers because without even having to ask you for references, it's already readily available for them. So you can actually ask folks for recommendations. So you'll see the arrow there is pointing to ask for a recommendation. So if you click that button, you can type in someone's name. So for example, I'm going to write in Keisha's name, and Keisha's going to get a message on LinkedIn that says, "Hi, Keisha, I'm wondering if you would write me a recommendation. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Lindsay." And then Keisha then has the option to come in and write me a recommendation. Again, it's just a way to kind of ask for a reference letter. So, if you have a manager, for example, maybe some really close coworkers, then you could ask them to write you a recommendation about the work that it is that you're doing in your workplace. Again, same thing goes with recommendations as I just mentioned with skills. So if you go in and you write someone a recommendation, chances are they're going to return the favor. The only thing is that a recommendation does take a little more work than endorsing a skill. Endorsing a skill takes a click of a button, whereas a recommendation takes some time to really think about what you're going to write. So it's not always going to work in your favor. So that's why the ask for a recommendation button is there. So that's pretty much what I have today in terms of content for LinkedIn and what it is that you can do to optimize your LinkedIn. But of course, it doesn't stop there. You don't edit your LinkedIn profile and then all of a sudden you're done and that's it. So you want to make sure that you're staying active on LinkedIn. So build yourself a strategy. How often are you going to post organically? An organic post just means a post that you're generating yourself and that you're pushing out as your original content versus a shared content, which would be, let's say, for example, TED Talks puts out a really great TED Talk and you decide to share it and add your own comments. That would be shared content. So how often are you going to post yourself versus share another post? And how will you implement keywords and employer values into your posts? So again, we don't want to be necessarily robots of what our future employers are, but we want to make sure that we're keeping in mind that what we're sharing aligns with them. So of course, for example, again, if we're going back to the Skills Canada, we're looking at empowering youth, we're looking at skilled trades and technologies, but a really good TED Talk comes across my feed about mental health and creating accessible mental health resources in Newfoundland, for example. I'm not going to not share it simply because it doesn't align with my employer. I can still absolutely share that because it aligns with who I am and what I'm passionate about. So while we're talking a lot about, sharing what it is that your future employers are interested in, make sure at the same time that you're still putting a taste of who you are as well, because you want to make sure that you're still personable and that you're still representing who you are. Because again, we don't want to be company robots. And lastly, write an article and share your expertise. So LinkedIn actually has an option for you to share an article, which means that you can write essentially like a blog post. So by you writing a blog post like this, again, it gives employers the ability to be able to see who you are, how you write, the things that you're passionate about, maybe what you have to say about a particular topic. And if they're really on board with what you've had to say, they might be really interested. Maybe it'll be enough for them to reach out. As well, it can also be picked up by other people. So a few years ago, I wrote an article for my class about why getting involved during a university life is super important. And McGill actually found that article, which to me was huge because at the time, I thought McGill was like the school for student engagement. So to be picked up by them and for them to share my article was a huge accomplishment for me. So again, I only wrote that article for an assignment for a class, but at the end of the day, someone somewhere else in the world found that article and shared it with their students because they thought it was beneficial. So again, that's kind of how you make those connections. You think that when you click post on something, that's it, the post is done, but you're actually opening up the option for a lot of networks to open up. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're making your LinkedIn profile posts. So that's all I have today. Of course, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please feel free to do so. My link is there. But what I'll do is I'll kind of open up the floor to questions if anyone has any questions. If not, of course, then we can just end this here. But I want to say thank you to everyone who did show up. And if you do have questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. All right, so should a student put their GPA on their profile? So that is totally up to you. If you have a really great GPA that you would like to share with your employers, then absolutely you can put that on there. If you're someone who doesn't necessarily have a great GPA or one that maybe you're not comfortable sharing, then there's absolutely no pressure whatsoever. So, this is totally up to you, and you kind of decide what it is that you want to do and whether you want to share that. When it comes to a resume, I will say probably don't put it on your resume. But again, LinkedIn profile is kind of more, you can put more content in there. So,
Lindsay, someone just asked if they will get these slides, the slideshow that you made. I could get you to send it over to me, and then I could send it over to them.
Yeah, absolutely. That works perfectly.
We have another question here. Should students put in academic researches in their profile as well besides job experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's actually a spot on LinkedIn. I'm going to open up LinkedIn real quick just to find what exactly it's called. But there is a place that you can put publications, for example. Yeah, so we have publications, honors and awards, any sort of programs that you might have developed or were part of. All of those things are super important because, again, it kind of shows you the things that you were involved with, the things that you were passionate about. So if you were part of any research teams, absolutely put that in there. So I did just get a question, direct message. Are employers heading to LinkedIn before advertising openings? So it totally depends on the employer. Everyone is different. So some employers do have very strict policies that they have to follow where they do have to put up the advertisement, and then that's what they kind of have to pull from. But some employers will search through LinkedIn. So for example, maybe a bigger company like, I don't know, let's use Valet, where they're hiring so many people. They can go on LinkedIn. Well, I'm not saying that Valet can definitely do this. I'm just using them because they're a bigger company. But let's say, the recruiter for LinkedIn is cruising through one day and they come across a really great candidate for a job, and they know that there's a job opening that's currently available. And they can message that person and say, hey, we currently have a job opening. Looks like you'd be a great employer. Please go ahead and put your name in and we'll consider you. But you've already got kind of your resume at the top of that stack because the recruiter already knows who you are and they're the ones who told you to apply. So while maybe they're not necessarily recruiting through LinkedIn all the time, they're definitely keeping in mind the names that they are noticing and those who are sticking out.
Awesome. Actually, I have a question, Lindsay.
Yeah.
For the bio, is it standard to have that written in third person?
So again, it's totally up to you. When I did my class, my professor said that it's nice to have it in third person because then it's more like it's a storytelling of who you are. Whereas if you're using first person, it just sounds like you're telling someone about who you are. And I mean, either way, it's fine. But the third person apparently just comes off a little more professional.
Okay, awesome. So if that's the end of the questions, if anybody has any questions after this event, you can feel free to email myself or Lindsay, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. But I just wanted to thank Lindsay once again for sharing her insight on personal branding and LinkedIn. I know that I learned a lot. My LinkedIn is definitely going to need some beefing up after this session. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you.